Welcome to The Right Frame of Mind, a podcast that explores the mental hurdles of a writing career. I'm your host, Adrienne Giordano. In each episode, I talk with an author about a challenge they faced and the mindset shift that got them through. Let's dive into the writer's mind. I'm here with my guest, Liz Talley. Liz is the USA Today bestselling author of over 30 heartwarming stories. She's a finalist in both the Romance Writers of America Golden Heart and Rita Awards. Liz is published with Harlequin, Hallmark, and Montlake, where she reached #1 in Kindle Romance and was named to Publishers Weekly Mass Market bestseller list. Her stories are set in the South, where the tea is sweet, the summers are hot, and the porches are wide. In 2023, she also added screenwriter to her accomplishments, co-writing an adaptation of her novel, The Wedding War, which landed in the top 20 of the Louisiana Film Prize. Wow! Welcome to the show, Liz.
Thank you for having me. I was so excited to do this. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, so I may be a little rusty. Your viewers will have to
Not at
forgive me.
all. Yep, no, it's all good. We just get to chatting, and it's been a ton of fun talking with authors about their different publishing journeys. And you had an amazing journey, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it because I appreciate how you're always so open about the ups and downs of this industry. And it's refreshing to hear, especially I think for newer writers or even more advanced writers that have been published for a while. So when we had talked about you coming on the show, you had mentioned you wanted to chat a little bit about pivoting into a new genre and
Mhm.
starting over. So, my
Yes.
gosh, you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, it's a venture at this point. So I've had a successful career. I would call it moderately successful. I've had some times where my books did really, really well, and I've had some times where my books were kind of, ones that we always think the ones that we love are going to just soar. And sometimes that doesn't happen. I'm always honest about my journey because I think it's important that writers know you're not alone. When you try something new or you get excited about something and it doesn't work out, that happens much more regularly than what you think. So I'm always honest because I think that's honesty is the best policy. But in writing, a lot of times, and in this world that we live in, a lot of times honesty is hard to come by. And so I think it's good to share with writers that your journey's not perfect, because a lot of times when we look at our reels or we look at our Facebook or we look at our Insta or TikTok, it looks like it's just, a beautiful career that's blossomed or a beautiful journey and sometimes that's not the case. I mean, being a writer is a really difficult profession. And it's a really difficult venture for a lot of people starting out and it's only more difficult, I think, because of AI and because of the ability for people to generate stories very quickly with help. And I do think, I think a lot of profess they don't do that, but I do think there are a lot of authors who are using AI to create novels so that they can make a quick buck. So it's even harder in some ways to be a creative in this particular world.
Yeah, and with the pressure, right? Because you see there's so many books out there now.
So many. Yeah.
And yeah, and when you're a creative, it's not like you can just push the button and it's, oh, here
Right.
are all my ideas, right? So,
Yeah, I don't really want to veer into AI, but I do think AI has a purpose. It's great for research. I have used it for research when I'm unfamiliar, like with a plot line, like say it's something medical. I don't know anything about medicine. So a lot
yeah.
of times I'll type something in Chat GPT, like, what would this disease do? Or what kind of problems would it cause? That sort of thing. It makes it very useful. And I know a
Yes.
lot of people who do historical, fiction. There's just so much compiled in there. It's right at your fingertips. So there's a lot of good things about it, but I don't use it to create any of my words. There's just that's never going to happen. But I don't, I do think there's some authors who use it to create words. And I don't even want to call them authors. I think a lot of times what you venture into is that's kind of like a business venture. I'm going to create these books and I'm going to use AI to do it. And I'm going to put them out really quickly. I mean, we know the world we live in. People are trying to make a
Yeah.
fast buck and they'll do it in any way. But yeah, that's not something I'm interested in. I really love being a creative. I really love the struggle of a story. So yeah, that's, I don't want to take it in that particular path, but I do think that it is harder in some ways to be seen these days. There's just a lot of noise, and there are millions and millions of books that are out there that you're competing against.
Yeah. And you had talked about starting over in a new genre. I ventured out into, I wrote my first women's fiction. You were kind enough to give me a cover quote for that book.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a good book. I
and
love that book.
well, thank you. But it's a scary thing, right? Especially when your audience is somewhere else. So,
Right.
can you kind of talk about the challenges that you faced with that?
Yeah. So, in my career, I started out with Harlequin. I really learned to write. I cut my teeth on writing romance with Harlequin. Had a terrific senior editor that was my editor. And then I moved on to doing, broadening as we do, broadening, writing for some other publishers. I landed at Montlake where I was in romance with Montlake and I really enjoyed that. But my editor moved and I had an idea for a book that wasn't quite romance. And I just think as I got older, it's not that I was less interested in romance, but I was more interested in how women change in the woman's journey as our children grow up and they leave our home and what next? That was always like, what's next? And so I tended to write about a lot of women whose children had left and then it opened up a new path for them. And so I did women's fiction, really loved it. I do more humorous women's fiction. So mine tend to be a little rompy, which I like. But then my last book with Montlake was called Deconstructed. And I wanted to continue writing that as a series, and they did not want that as a series. So I did two books on my own. I indie published them. They both did fine. Readers loved them. They loved it was the same character who was like a private investigator. Her name was Cricket Crosby, and they loved her. They loved her best friend Ruby and the misadventures they got in together. But once I finished that, I just didn't want to continue making it a long series. I wasn't really interested in doing that. And so I was with my first agent. We tried a lot of different stuff. I mean, I was really trying to crack in, trying to break out in women's fiction. I wrote a dual timeline, big kind of like Southern Gothic type story. I really loved it, and it just didn't go anywhere. And so then we kind of went back to romance and tried some romance, and it was just kind of getting frustrating for a couple of years. Like we couldn't sell anything. The comments were good. We love her writing. It's so evocative. It's so but nobody wanted to buy it. And so I really just kind of felt like at that point I was throwing myself against a brick wall that was not going to fall down. So I began to think like, where did I want to go? So I had this idea that was a riff on a short story I taught when I was an English teacher. And I really wanted to take it into kind of like a quirky, suspensey type book. And that's not what I've ever written. So I just began to think on it, think about what I wanted to do. And I just felt like, right now I'm 53. This is when I was 52. I just kind of wanted to take a risk. So I thought, I'm just going to write this book. I'm not going to keep, I was putting out reverted books from Harlequin. I was kind of doing that. But when that other book failed to sell, and then some of my submission packages weren't selling, I just thought, what if I wiped the board clean and I just started over? That just sounded good to me. And it was a risk, a big risk. Still is a big risk because I haven't sold the book. But I parted ways with my agent. I loved my agent. She did beautiful work for me for many years. Still love her. And we're still friends. But she was really a romance. Her bread and butter was romance. And that's what she sold. She did some women's fiction. But like, if you looked at all of her sales, if you went and looked on Publishers Marketplace, that's where she sold. And I just felt like if I was going to go into this new venture into this kind of quirky suspense, space, then that was going to be more difficult for her to sell because she hadn't, agents have to like, you know, form relationships with editors. And so the editors who might be interested in this book that I wrote were not ones that my former agent probably was going to be as familiar with. She's a great agent, but I felt like I wasn't selling for her. She needed room on her list for an author that she could sell, and then she wasn't able to sell what I was writing. And so I thought, let's just start over. So I did. I parted ways, tearfully parted ways.
Oh my
It was
gosh. Yeah.
very difficult because I do love her. Um, and then I just wrote the book. I just said, I'm going to write the complete book, give myself months to do that. And I did. And then in the spring, I began sending it to some beta readers, some of my trusted writer friends, getting feedback. And then at the end of May, mid May, end of May, I went out on submission to agents. And I was specifically looking for agents who sold in the thriller, suspense, mystery world, and ones that sold debut authors. So that was an adventure.
Yeah.
I hadn't done that in a while. So yeah, I did that, started getting requests for fulls. The book that I wrote is a very high concept, very commercial feeling book. And so it was great to see that there was interest. So I think about June I went to New York City for Thriller Fest. Another first for me. I went to a conference that wasn't romance. But it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and got to meet a lot of different people there. And then I pitched to editors and agents at Thriller Fest, which was another, it was like really going
Yeah.
back in time.
Going back to the beginning,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
I mean, I stood in that line and thought, "Oh, I've been here before." It's not easy. It was not any easier. The only thing I will say, yeah,
My friend Tracy was working the pitch room
yeah, she
and
was. I
she
was like,
texted
Tracy.
me.
She's like, "What are you doing here?"
She texted me. She goes, I just saw Liz Talley in the pitch room.
I know. It was crazy. But I wanted to do it that way. I mean, I had some friends that had recommended me to their agents, of course. I mean, you have friends that are like, I'm going to let my agent know. Which I was very grateful for. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to treat this like I'm a newbie. I'm going to sit in on um the pitch sessions. I wanted to feel that again. I wanted to feel like I was truly starting over. And so I did. I went and pitched. Mostly I pitched to editors because at that time I had started getting requests for fulls and agents wanting to talk to me. So I ended up with 3 agents that pretty much were offering representation, which is incredible because you just never know. You really just never know. That was really hard for me because I was trying to, in the publishing world, that's called like a beauty pageant where these agents are, but and that was hard for me because I like to please everyone. I'm a pleaser and I don't like to tell anyone no for anything. And they were all great agents, all of them great agents. But I met with one who was very persistent. She felt like she had a really good vision for it. And she wanted me to do some revisions on it, which I wanted that. I wanted someone who said, let's get this really ready. So I did all that and we went out on submission at the very beginning of September. So now I'm in that.
Yes, the waiting.
So it's waiting. And so I talked to her yesterday and she just said it's so slow. She said the publishers that she's talked to, most of them are just, inundated with manuscripts. She said one told them like 4 times more than what they're accustomed to. So and that makes sense to me because I think a lot of people who were doing indie thought this is great, but the indie world is really tough. You know this. I mean, I think you've done some indie stuff. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but I've done indie and I've tried to walk that road and it is you have to be very savvy and you have to be really a business person to be a good indie author. That's really not my realm. I'm not great at business. I love to create and I love to write. I'm not good at the business aspect. So I think a lot of people where that got really crowded thought, let me try to get an agent. And also, if they were successful indie authors, they were looking to get their books in stores and distribution, and an agent can help them do that. So I just think editors and agents are really just buried. They're buried by submissions at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
and I agree with you because it is, again, we talked in the beginning about how flooded the market is right
mm,
now.
it
And
really is.
as an indie author, if you don't have a following, that makes it even harder,
Oh, I think
right?
it's so tough,
So,
so tough.
yeah, it's so tough. So, yeah, I totally agree with you that it's sort of swinging back the other way now, where some
Yeah,
authors are trying to get traditionally published again.
yeah, and I went to a reader conference where my former agent, I met her there and she was taking in pitches, but from these all these authors, but they were incredibly successful indie authors. But, we know, maybe readers don't know, but as writers, we know, you need publishers in some ways to get you in places that you can't get in by yourself. Now, some people can, if they're big enough indie, they can get in where they want to, but publishers can do good work for you in regard to, um, you know, book fairs and book club picks like Reese's and Jenna Bush's and GMA and all those. That's where publishers can do work. And so I think a lot of indie authors, once they made a lot of money, they thought, what's next? I mean,
Yeah,
so really in publishing, it's what do you want? Do you want to make a lot of money? Because if you want to make a lot of money and you're business minded and savvy, I think you can really do well in indie um, or self-publishing. But if you're not, and you really want to have a shot at like a book club pick or your book at Target, then traditional is kind of the way to go. And there's no wrong answer. It really just depends on what you as an author are looking
hmm,
for. For me, I was I went back to trying to get an agent and do a traditional deal because that's where I felt comfortable. There's can do something and there's I want to do something. I can be an indie author. I can learn all the ropes. I took all the classes. I did all of the
yeah,
the stuff to learn how to market and how to, play the ad games. I did all that, but I didn't want to.
right,
And there's a
right.
difference. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of decided what do I want? So I'm doing this venture. And here's the thing it may not work out. I mean, my agent may not be able to sell that book. And that's true. And and I had to be okay with that. I think you have to be okay with taking a risk to know that it may not pan out. And let's be honest, a lot of times it's not going to pan out because most people, when they take a risk and they roll the dice, it doesn't, a lot. I don't know what the percentages are when you take a risk and you try something new and it working out, but I think there's a lot of people who fail at it. And I
Yeah,
may fail at it.
yeah. And, like having the courage to do it, right? Because again, you're just, you're really expanding that comfort zone
Yeah.
of,
I
okay,
threw
we're
it
gonna,
I threw that comfort zone right out the window.
yeah. So how do you push yourself to be comfortable? Like you mentioned being comfortable with taking the risk, right? So for you, what did that look like?
Well, I had some people model it for me. So one of my friends here in Shreveport, I live in Shreveport, Louisiana. Her name is Ashley Elston, and she is an author who was a YA, a young adult author. She had really nice success with Disney. She did some books for Disney, had some film adaptation, like signed some film adaptation stuff. I mean, she was doing well with what she was writing. And she had an idea. So she is critique partners with two very successful suspense thriller authors who had really good success, like New York Times bestselling success. And so she had an idea for an adult book. And so she ran it past her agent. Her agent really specializes in young adult, and her agent was not keen on it. She, of course, wanted her to keep doing what she was doing. And they kind of like, just kind of butted heads on that. And so she did kind of what I did. She said, I just parted ways with my agent and I wrote the book. She goes, I love the idea. I love the premise. And I had support from my friends. And she said, I just did it. And then she went out on submission for agents. So she did it, she modeled it for me. Now she's had incredible success. I don't think that's going to happen for me, but she got a great agent who was very enthusiastic, took it to Pamela Dornan Books at Viking, and then she ended up as a Reese's book club pick. It got
Wow.
optioned for film, and then the script was written by the writers of Grey's Anatomy. I mean, she's had incredible success, and she just got back from LA because she did Reese's book club. She always does an annual event. I mean, like,
Wow.
she
Yeah.
modeled great success. Now, I am not fooling myself that that would happen for me, but it was a good moment where I remember talking to her and she said, "If it doesn't work out, what do I lose?" And I just
Right.
kept thinking, where I am right now, if it doesn't work out, what's my loss? The only loss I have is my time in having written a book that didn't sell. And so what's the risk? Why not take the risk? Like I said, I'm
Yeah.
53. It feels like a good age for taking risk in my career. And if it doesn't pan out, then it doesn't pan out. And I can always do something else. And I like that
And you just
attitude.
never know. I love, your point. You just never know when some famous person is going to read your book and
That's
send a
right.
tweet,
That's right.
and there you have it.
Yeah. I mean, I think as authors, we always have hope, right? I mean, we always have hope that what we're going to write is going to strike a chord, not only in readers, because we're writing it, that's the contract we have. We write this story. It's not fulfilled until a reader reads your story. And then to me, that's when it's like, it came together. But we wanted to strike chords in people who can make things happen because we always want our stories elevated. I want more people to read my stories, whether they like them or they don't like them. The more people who read it, the more I feel like that story grows and has a life. So I always want to elevate my stories. I always want more people to read them. So, why not take that risk? And like I said, if it doesn't work out, then all I've wasted is my time. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
still back where I am. It's not like my
Yeah.
career. The only step back, I guess it would be, is that I haven't put anything out new for my readers in a while. And so you lose a little traction in regard to, that's the reason why indie authors are always putting things out because they always want to be
Hmm.
in your inbox. I haven't been in the
Yeah.
inbox in a while, but that's okay. I mean, I think at a certain point in our lives that we have to take chances and I can always pivot again. I
Yeah.
think pivot's a good word because I think it's a good word to have in these days in publishing.
And going back to the beginning, going back and almost starting over, how did that feel for you?
It's kind of weird. I'm really, you know, I love the whole path that I've had. I've met a lot of wonderful people, but I've seen publishing change a lot. I mean, when I first started, submissions were sent to agents. I don't know when you started, but I started back when you had to mail your
The
submissions
book, the box.
and you had to mail the envelope with your self-addressed stamp for them to mail back things like "not for us"
Right.
and "no way, Jose" or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
I remember on my birthday, I got 3 rejection letters on my birthday. It was so, you know, salt in the wound.
Yeah.
But, you know, I I I enjoyed my journey because I really learned how to write books. I worked with some fantastic editors. Um, of course, my first agent really elevated my game and did so much good work for me. So, right now I'm just kind of like in a weird spot
Yeah.
of starting over. But even at that point in trying this venture, I know that if it fails and like my whole venture to write something quirky and different and maybe a little outside my comfort zone. I mean, I still have a comfort zone and I can still go back to
Hmm.
writing romance and I already have an audience for that. I have really good readers. I have readers who will read anything I write, I feel like. I don't have a great many of them, but the ones I have are fierce and mighty and they read all
Yes.
my stuff.
Yeah.
So, I feel like, okay, if this doesn't work, then, my next might be just going back to the beginning and
Yeah.
starting back with romance again. We'll see. We'll just see
Yeah.
I don't know what the future holds, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Love that. So if you were to think back, right, thinking about, boy, sending those manuscripts out in the book boxes. I think I still have one of those boxes down in the basement that I've, kept for posterity or whatever. What is one piece of advice that you could give to a newer author?
So I always say that it's your story. And I think a lot of times when you're new, you send your story in. I did a lot of contests like back then there were lots of writing
Yep.
contests and So I belong to Romance Writers of America, and every chapter had a contest. That's how they raised money. And so I did a lot of contests. And early on, so my first genre I wrote in was historical romance. That was what I started in. That's what I loved. I loved reading historical romance. And so my first books that I wrote 2 books that were historicals, never saw the light of day, but they were my cutting my teeth books. And
Practice
what
books.
happened in all of that is I got lots of different suggestions on what to do, where to start, what to do in those stories. And I chased all of them because when you're new, you don't trust yourself. You know, you're still learning your craft. Do think craft is very important. Reading craft books, thinking about point of view, doing goal motivation, conflict charts, all those things are very essential to learn the basic blocks of storytelling. So don't skip that. Just don't skip it. But also, the beauty of each storyteller is your voice and how you tell a story. And when you envision a story, it's your story. So I recommend that you hold on to your story. If you hear the comment over and over, and I think this is probably true. If someone says over and over, this starts in the wrong place, this starts in the wrong place, and you get that over and over, I think you have to listen to that. So you can't be totally stubborn, but you also have to cling to your vision for the story because agents
Hmm.
can overwrite that vision. Well-intentioned writing friends can overwrite that intention. So for new writers, I would say do your craft work, but also on those beta reads or those contests or those agents, when you get feedback back, unless you get it over and over again, don't chase every rabbit because
Mm.
you'll cleanse that manuscript of any personality that it has that belongs to you. You wrote that story. So, I always say, you're the storyteller, the story belongs to you. The story is the thing. You can fix a lot of things, but trust your vision for the story. Like I said, unless you hear over and over that there's something wrong with it, or unless someone buys it and your editor tells you to fix it. I always think you should listen to your editors because they've paid money for the story and now you're partners. When
Yes.
you have an editor, you're partners with your editor. And so
Yeah.
your vision can change with the help of an editor who knows the market, who knows storytelling, and who knows what the publisher really wants or needs. So, but yeah, I think just be very careful about chasing rabbits.
Yeah. And, I so agree with that because as you've been talking and I'm thinking about it, over the years, how the people you take feedback from get smaller and smaller because you do tend to get so many voices in your head. And chasing the rabbits is such a great way to put it, because you're like, rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. And you really can't get yourself caught up in a ball. And,
No,
now there's just a handful of people that I ask for feedback. And,
right.
again, if it doesn't hit you the right way, that's fine too. But just knowing who you can trust and having the faith to trust yourself too, I
Yeah.
think sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for
you have to cling
sure.
to what makes your story your story.
Yeah.
That's if someone tells you redo it this way, that's their story. It's not
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I chased a lot of rabbits early on and it did damage to my writing in some ways. Not that it backed me up because I did learn a lot of things, but in some ways it taught me, you know, to not listen to myself. And I do think in some ways as a creative, you have to listen to that voice inside that says this is your story.
Yes. Yeah, love it. All right. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much for
I loved
coming
it.
on and chatting. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
I will put the link to your website in the show notes, but
Yeah, great. I didn't
where's,
even bring a book with me. I mean, you have all
well,
your
that's
cute
all
little
right. I'll
books in
have
the lamp back there. It's precious. And
my,
I'm like, oh, have a
yeah,
thing.
that's the thing, because this is my writing chair, so
There you go.
when I'm having one of those days where I think I just can't do this, I turn around and I look at the lamp and I
That's
go, yeah,
right. That's right.
I've done this. I can do, because we all have those days, right? Where it's just like,
Man,
I can't do this. I can't
they
do
creep
this.
up on you.
They
They
do.
will kind of strangle you some days. So it's good that you have
Yes.
that reminder.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so I will put your website in the show notes, but is there anywhere else readers can catch up with
No,
you? Social
I've loved,
media, anything?
yeah, you can follow me on Facebook. So under Liz Talley Books. I don't, like I said, I haven't had a whole lot to post here lately, but you can also follow me on Amy Liz Talley on Instagram. My real name's Amy and Liz is my writing name. And you can find me on Instagram, and most of that's just goofy stuff. It's not necessarily all book related, but on my author page, a lot of times I'll recommend people that I've read, or I'll ask what you're reading. And so we have good bookish chats. But yeah, so I'm happy to have new friends, and I would love to have.
Well, thank you again for coming on the
Yeah,
show.
thanks for
And
asking
good
me.
luck with the submissions.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see how it goes. It may be a bust, but that's how life is.
You never know. You never know.
Right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Have a good one. I loved it.
You too.
Thank you for listening to The Right Frame of Mind. The Right Frame of Mind is a member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great interview and more tips for managing the mental challenges of a creative career.